Funky chicken salad, turkey, ham, vegetarian, or vegan? Oh, and roast beef.
Oh my gosh.
All right, we can repeat those. Can we start with yourself?
Okay. Hi, my name is Juyeon Hwang. I'm a doctoral candidate at the College of Journalism and Communication. And you want?
Thank you. Yourself.
I'm Jess Warren. I'm a first year student in historic preservation doctoral program, and I'll go to vegetarian.
All right.
Hey, I'm Emily Brooks. I'm in the English department, first year of my PhD, and I'll go with turkey.
JD.
Hello, I'm JD. I'm in the linguistics department, and I'll go with chicken.
All right.
Hey, my name is Leela. I'm in the art history department, School of Art and Art History, and I am a master's student. And I would like vegetarian.
My name's Leslie. I'm also in the Department of Art History, and I'm a second year PhD student, and I would like turkey.
Hi, my name is Shiro, where I'm from College of Education.
And you would like?
My name is David Cox. I'm from the Psych Department, a doctoral student, behavior analysis education. And I'll go turkey.
My name is Omodio. I'm a third year PhD student from the College of Health and Human Performance. And I want chicken.
Hi everyone, my name is Tin. I'm an assistant professor in languages, literature, and cultures. Sounds like I'm the oldest person here. No. Chicken please.
Hi, my name is Eugene Chen. I'm from Religion Department. Actually, I just submitted my proposal to apply for a scholarship from a Whole Family Foundation. But even though I have already submitted the proposal, I still think that it's a good chance to learn more. Vegetarian.
Hi everyone, I'm Chen. I'm from geography. So I'm an FED student. I'm almost finished, probably next spring. So, but I would love to get chicken.
Last chicken.
Hi, I'm Fanny. I'm a PhD student in sociology department. I would like turkey.
I'm Andrew. I'm a PhD candidate in history. Would you like the chicken, turkey, ham?
One of those, yes.
Either or.
You get turkey.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I come from Department of Urban and Regional Planning. I'm the first year PhD student. I'd like chicken.
We're out of chicken, unfortunately. Turkey, ham, vegetarian.
Turkey.
What's left, Tim?
Turkey, ham, and vegetarian.
And vegan.
And vegan. Vegan is no cheese and no animal products.
My name's Kim Emery. I'm an associate professor of English and undoubtedly the oldest student here. And that one vegan one is mine.
I'm Peter Gitto. I studied film in the English department and a PhD student of Turkey.
I'm Brian Kozik, third year PhD student in the history department. I'll ham.
My name is Brandon Jett. I'm also a PhD student in the history department, and I'll take a ham sandwich.
I'm Venetia Pons. I'm a first year PhD student in the anthropology department, and I am the oldest person here. But I like a napkin.
I'm Timoteo Mesh. I'm a PhD candidate from the Department of Anthropology, and I'll take any roast beef if there's something in that.
I'm Ben. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Anthropology, and I'll eat anything. So.
Thank you.
My name is Sean. I'm a first year MA student also within the Department of Anthropology, and I will take a ham, please.
I'm Michelle Eusebio, also from Anthropology Department, major in archaeology, and already cooked the roast beef. I will need a table napkin too.
All right, Ann.
Hi, I'm Rodney. I'm from the Department of Religion. I'm a third year PhD student, and I'll take vegan, please.
Well, so that's it. I have to say, this is the most creative way I've met people in a workshop. And I think we should give the folks at the center a hand for the wonderful meal. It does show how much they care and love you, that they would give you a workshop, not charge you, and then feed you. I think part of the incentive is that we would like you to stay for the whole workshop, right? Because it's a 3-hour workshop. When we originally envisioned the workshop, I thought, well, you know, we might have done it 4 o'clock, because I've never done this workshop before. This is my first time, so you all are not only learners, but guinea pigs. And we're going to see how this experimental workshop goes and if it works. So we are probably going to go till 5. And I would encourage you to stick it out and to take advantage of the opportunity to be here with your colleagues. What a great group of people who are all interested in what they're doing. So as we continue to distribute wonderful things to eat, and as you eat, I mean, you can eat, or you can wait till later to eat. We're going to be moving to the computer lab soon, or after. But I wanted to go over the agenda with you. So we're going to have a PowerPoint, and then we're going to do some exercises. We're going to pass out actual proposals, and you needed a highlighter in order to do that work. So this will give you time, if you can eat now, to finish eating, and then you'll have the space and the whatever in order to do the assignment. So we're going to be doing a series of exercises. So this will be an exercise, this one, and this one, in which you're reading proposals and highlighting what I'm asking you to highlight. And then we're going to do this exercise where you're going to review what you highlighted and see if you can come up with the questions that would have given you those answers. Like Jeopardy, kind of like Jeopardy. Then we're going to take a break from 3:45 to 4 if we follow this format exactly, which we don't know if that's going to happen. And move over to 2:11, which is a computer lab. And we're going to pair you up, and you're going to actually be working on your statements for your project. Or I have a proposal that I think has a very weak statement, and you can practice fixing that statement as your exercise. So I think this is going to be a time in which we're going to practice together. So that leads me to my opening remarks. And I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. So how many of you practiced something in your life? So practice, it could be music, sports, it could be web design, it could be meditation, it could be visual arts, anything. How many of you practiced something in your life? Okay, every single one of you. Interesting. It could be practicing brushing your teeth. You've been doing that for a long time, right? And the dentist keeps telling you that you need to get better. So this idea of practicing is what we're going to emphasize today. Grant writing, and I've been either teaching people to write grants or doing it myself or working with lots of people to do it for 27 years. I would say that in addition to playing the clarinet for way longer than 27 years, that I have kind of become a master in this genre, you could say, right? And according to Daniel Coyle, who wrote the book, The Talent Code, and I would recommend it to anyone. He has a really nice blog. You just Google Talent Code. So he traveled all over the world to very impoverished places to find out what it is that people practice in these places and why they produce the best, say, Honduras produces the best baseball player, right? Or the Dominican Republic, I'm sorry. And Brazil produces the best soccer players, but guess what? Those kids never see a soccer ball because they can't afford one. So what is it about these locations that produce masters? It's repetition. It's the whole 10,000 hours, he claims. 10,000 hours to become a master at something that you practice, right? And by the way, I'm going to be telling you things that you already know, okay? So you're going to forgive that I'm already telling you what you already know, and take it as this is really good to be reminded. So I would say that grant writing is a practice, and it's an art form. And if you choose to do it one time a year for the next 20 years of your life, you will never achieve much. Okay? Because one time of year would mean probably 1 month of your life. That is not going to compute. So 10,000 hours is close to 40 hours per week for 5 years to become a master. And I would recommend that you begin to see grant writing and grant seeking. Let's look at it from the higher level. Grant seeking as something that you want to at least become good at, if not become a master, right? Because if you're going to just fool around with it and every once in a while say, oh, I'm going to take a chance on this, right? I will tell you, that's not going to be a very satisfying activity. And you will probably fail a lot. The whole shotgun approach where professors that I've heard just use the variable of ratio, the number of applications they send out, the number of reviewers that review, then the chance that they might get funded. I really don't use that at all in the work that I do here with the librarians and with the people in the libraries. We assess for feasibility of whether this project is going to be considered excellent or not, okay? And that's the philosophy I have, and I'm writing about that in my first publication, Collaborative Grant Seeking, a Practical Guide for Librarians. So it seems like you're adopting this idea that, yes, grant seeking could be a genre, a discipline for you to become educated and learned in, right? To study it. Okay. Let's see. So the whole issue of grant writing is a gray area. That's why it's like an art form. Okay. It's gray because it's not black or white. Ever. Every situation, every single application that you see, every single guideline that you read is different from the other one. Other people wrote it. Whether you can understand the guidelines or not is of no consequence to them. You are, they are the customer, okay? They are your customer. And as long as they're happy with their guidelines, that's all that matters. Whether it helps you or not is not their concern. If you know that going in, then you understand you are not entitled to anything, right? You are not entitled to understand these guidelines. You are not entitled to understand how your proposal is going to be reviewed. You are not entitled to an award. I can tell you stories of sponsors that called me and said, Bess, can you talk to these applicants who insist that they deserve this award? And help them calm down a little bit and understand that this is not, it could be government funding and you're a taxpayer. It still doesn't mean you're entitled to an award, right? So I think that's something to remember. The second thing to remember is that this is not a solo sport, okay? That grant seeking is not a solo sport. If you think it is, then you are headed for lots and lots of suffering and misery, okay? I'm gonna leave that one as it is and help you understand that you need to talk to other people about what you're doing and you need to show other people your work. And it should be people that don't understand your work, that read over your materials, and if they can understand it, then anyone can understand it. If they're not excited about it, after they read it, then you're in trouble, okay? It should capture you, engage you from the moment you start to read about it. And you're gonna see many examples today. So today, the third concept is that grant seeking, grant preparation is very different from journal writing. Very different from writing a report or writing anything else that you've ever written. So someone can tell you, a professor might say to you, Bonnie, you are the most excellent writer of all time. Does that mean that she's gonna be a great grant preparator, a grant of projects? It has nothing to do with it. Whether, I was a terrible writer, I've got to tell you. Thank goodness I found the clarinet. But I got a D in reading in 5th grade, okay? My mother wrote it on the back of my school picture. Today, Bessie brought a D in reading. English is not my first language. And I have lots of reasons now that I understand why I was a terrible reader. But I was a terrible writer too until I met a great teacher in 10th grade who taught me how to write. So it has to do with understanding the difference between a grant application and any other kind of writing that you've done, okay? It is a document that convinces a total stranger and a group of strangers that your idea and your work is valued and should be supported. It's an investment in you personally to do this work. And that the sponsor has utmost confidence that you can do it. That is not what you do in a journal article, is it? Right? I hope I'm not lecturing too much. Okay. So now we're going to move to this, and I have these. So everybody can have one of these. I don't know. So this is a good document on which you can take notes. The last page has a lot of white space on it. If you think that anything I'm saying is worthy of note-taking. So this is, again, I will reiterate, this is the first time I'm doing this So What workshop. And it was Sophia's idea to come up with this So What question, which I love. Okay, so this first slide is, so how many of you have actually read a grant application? Yes? Okay, good. Most of you. I think we might take a detour and go and look at one. So you dig around, because there's a lot of promotion about the sponsor there, and then you dig around and you finally find the guidelines, right? And you're reading the guidelines, and you have these questions. So what does the sponsor want? I'm not really clear what they want. Why aren't they more clear? Because you're not the customer, they're the customer, right? How do they want it? Well, I'm not really sure. How should I present my case? How should I write this? I'm not really sure how to do that. Where do they want it? Well, they ask for all this stuff, but it kind of doesn't flow with the work that I'm doing. So can I reorganize it? Can I put what they want over here, over there? What happens if I do that? Will I get in trouble? Will I get marked down? Why do they want to know this? I don't think this is important. Why are they bothering me about this silly thing that I can't answer? So you can see that everybody is thinking the same thing when they read grant guidelines, especially the ones that are not clear. especially the ones that are written by people who are not experienced at preparing guidelines. So do never expect to understand what it is that you're supposed to do. This should be a really good place for therapy, right? This is like social work. I'm a social worker, you guys are the patients, and now you should feel better that you're not capable of understanding what's in the guidelines. Okay. So the clues are in the guidelines. And I'm going to give you some examples of the instructions that I've pulled from different guidelines. So this one, provide a one-page abstract written for a non-specialist audience. That means somebody that knows nothing about what you're talking about, stating clearly the importance of the proposed work and its relation to larger issues in the humanities. Okay. It's helpful, but not really that helpful. So if we, and these are the parts of the guidelines related to significance, okay? Now, what is helpful is to look at what other guidelines ask you, right? To say, oh, look, there's an idea over here in this other guideline that I could use for this application, right? Because there's no rules, this is a gray area, and you need as much help as you can get. And not looking at just one guideline is actually helpful to you. So the other thing is that you need to remember that it's not the Bible that you're reading when you're reading the guidelines. Okay? It's gray. This is gray literature, right? You can go to other places and say, what do they ask for here in this guideline that refers to significance? Maybe that would help you. So let's look at another one. Describe the intellectual significance of the proposed project, including its value to humanities scholars, general audiences, or both. Provide an overview of the project explaining the basic ideas, problems, or questions examined by the study. Explain how the project will complement, challenge, or expand relevant studies in the field. How many like this one better than the other one? Woohoo! Yeah. Is this helpful? I had to go find this one for you. It wasn't in the first one. So someone is a good guidelines writer, whoever wrote this, right? So let's go to another one. Explain the issue or problem to be addressed and how the humanities would benefit from the proposed solution. Describe how the project would advance humanities research, education, or public programming. Discuss the relation of your project to other work in the field and its contribution to solving the research problem. How many of you like this one? I actually like this one. It gives you new questions. So what do all of these give you? They're in statements. What you need to do is take statements and convert them into questions, because the mind doesn't work well with statements. What you're trying to do is create a container. A grant application is a container of information. Do we agree? Right? And you believe, because you're novices, that the guidelines will tell you how to make the container. And that's true. But it's not, the container will not do you any good if you only use the instructions as your resource for making your questions and designing your container. The most amount of time needed in this preparation is to prepare your container, right? That means preparing a checklist of questions that you are going to answer regardless of what it says in the guidelines. And you're going to try to put those questions where it is that the guidelines want it. You're going to try your best. And if it doesn't fit there, you're going to put it somewhere else, right? Because you're still addressing the question. So, And you're gonna look at other guidelines to help you make a good container. Because these other questions, these other guidelines gave you hints about what you could talk about in your answer that the first one didn't give you, right? Okay, and these all have to do with significance of your goal. Here's another guideline. And discuss the significance of this work within your specific and general fields. Balance the description of specific work plans against an overview of your goals and the contribution this project will make to the fields it engages. I have to tell you that this one is pretty much all you get when you write this fellowship application. That's pretty much what you get as your instructions for preparing your 3-page or 5-page narrative. So the clue is, it says balance the description of specific work plans against an overview of your goals and the contribution this project will make to the fields it engages. Those are 3 specific things. If you add discuss the significance of this work within your specific and general fields, that's another 4 or 5, right? So now you have, say, 5 pages in which to disperse this amount of information. And if you don't have a container that helps you frame how you're going to get from one thing to another, do you think it's going to be balanced? It's not going to be balanced. You're going to write whatever the heck you want to write, right? And then you're going to say, let me flip a coin or roll the dice and see if I get this. So now you're just playing the game, which is, I'm just going to write this the way I want, and I'm going to hope that I get it. And if I don't get it this time, I'll try again next year, and then I'll try again next year. You can be deliberate and create a container that will work really well for you if you spend the time doing it before you even start to write your first thought. You're just going to write the questions in the order in which you want to answer them that will give you the result that's a balanced approach, right? I guess I'm a little emotional about this because I feel badly that people don't know how to do this work because they haven't had a chance to spend all the time that I have on this kind of work. So when you do it for a living, you get to spend a lot of time doing it. Okay, so the other part of the equation is that the container has to be designed with the criteria in mind. So let's say you have the instructions and the guidelines. State this, state this, state this, state this. And you do all of that, but you never read the criteria for how you're going to be evaluated. Because that's in the back of the guidelines. It's in the very back. In fact, the guidelines are like 30 pages long. And you never even make it to even read that the criteria for how you're going to be judged is in the back of the room. So you have to bring that forward because that's how you're being judged. The criteria, then you convert those criteria into questions and use those questions in your container, right? And say, okay, I'm going to answer this criteria in this, and here. Not just once, maybe you can do it once, but if they're evaluating on that, then they should see it throughout your proposal so that they can feel it while they're reading it, okay? So, here's the criteria. The potential of the project to advance the field of study in which it is proposed and make an original and significant contribution to knowledge. So you have to convert this statement into a question or more than one question. Does anybody want to take a chance at a question? Somebody convert this into a question. Yes.
In what way is your research original?
Yes. And did you see that in the guidelines anywhere? No. Hello? If it said, if you answered Emily's question, then you would have a hook because now you hook the reader into learning something that is original to you, right? But you would have never seen that as a question because it's in the criteria. Okay, here's more criteria. This doesn't come from the humanities, but I actually liked it because guess they put it in the form of questions. So, how well does the activity advance discovery and understanding while promoting teaching, training, and learning? Maybe your idea has nothing to do with teaching, training, and learning. That's okay. But I think the beginning of that question, how does it advance discovery and understanding? That's a really good question. How well does the proposed activity broaden the participation of underrepresented groups? Maybe that's not what this fund is interested in, but wouldn't it be great if you talked about how your activity broadens participation by groups in general, and then telling us what groups it would serve? To what extent will it enhance the infrastructure for research and education? Well, that's a really good question. That probably would be a good question to have in any significant statement. Will the results be disseminated broadly to enhance understanding? That's a yes or no question. What you really want to do is say, answer the question, how will my results be disseminated and how will that enhance understanding, right? What may be the benefits of the proposed activity to society? Is that not an impactful thing to write about? This came from National Science Foundation guidelines, right? But it helps in the humanities because now you have new questions in which to frame your answers and to create excitement about your work. Here's another criteria. The intellectual significance of the proposed project includes its value to humanities, scholars, general audiences, or both, or all of those. So how are you going to prove that? You know, that's your question. How am I going to prove that what I'm doing is intellectually significant to these people? And you want to write that as your question in your container. And the more beautiful your container, the more beautiful your proposal. And that doesn't have to be hard or a place of suffering, does it? That has to be a place of joy where you celebrate your work rather than guess at how can I convince this person to give me $50,000? You know, you have to look at the issue as this. It has nothing to do about money. This proposal has nothing to do about money. This has to do with the beauty and the value of what I'm doing and how it contributes to the field. And that's really an amazing thing because nobody is duplicating you or your thoughts. And you're not duplicating anybody else because your fingerprint is unique. But you have to get to the essence of why it is unique. So what is a statement of significance? And this is my answer. It is an opportunity to educate the reader about the value of the proposed project. So I wanted to, I guess this version doesn't have the print that I got from Howard Zen. So Howard Zen says, I thought is it in here? Yeah. Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so why do you think this is so difficult? Because none of you were born grant writers. You are just ordinary people, right? You are not getting a PhD in philanthropy. If you were, you're not becoming a fundraiser. You are not told how to sell your product. You are not in marketing. So this is not in alignment with what you do on a normal, everyday basis with your mind and with your work. That's why it's so difficult. But have I proven to you that it's not so difficult? Yes? A little bit. Must have been a little poquito. Okay. So, another way to bring you closer to having more joy about your work and convincing the reader that they should fund you is to hook them with evidence. Okay? So you should have in your container a question that has to do with evidence. What evidence does Leslie have that proves what she is saying is truthful? How can she add something to the sentence that claims that no one is doing this work? No one has addressed this problem. There is a gap in this area. Based on what? How do you know that, right? So that should be another question in your container. The more evidence that you provide, what happens to the reader? What do you think happens to the reader?
More convinced.
Yes, more convinced. About what? What you intend to do. Okay? More convinced about what?
Your competence.
Your competence. Right. Because there's an exchange of money here. And there are a lot of people that are competing with you. And they want to make sure they don't make a mistake. Right? So, perfect slide. The essential goal. You are building confidence with the reviewers to invest in your product. Actually, this is a kind of a quote from one of the program officers at NEA, who said this during a phone conference. He said, what the applicant is trying to do is build confidence in the reviewer to make this investment in the project. Okay, so what questions can we answer that will articulate the value of a project in ways that will engage the reader into wanting to learn more? That's the question that you have to ask yourself every time you're writing a proposal. What are the questions that I'm going to answer that will articulate the value of what I want to do in ways that will engage the reader into wanting to learn more about me, about what I'm doing, about what I know, about what I don't know, about why I don't know what I don't know, etc., etc., etc. And if you've done that, they'll read your packet. Because most of them are volunteers, you know? So imagine this. You have a full-time job, whatever it is. You're a scholar somewhere, you're a researcher, you work in a nonprofit, you work in a library. You do your job, you come home, you eat dinner, and then you sit down to read your proposals. What kind of a life is that? you have to have some empathy for this person, right? And knowing this, you want to be in the pile that they want to read, right? You don't want to be in the pile that's like, oh my God, please don't let me have to read this. Okay. So, describing the project. All right, so I kind of did this for you. I wrote down all of the questions describing the value of the project. So these are the questions that I would ask myself. They're not very sophisticated questions at DC. What is it? Okay, so it is whatever it is, right? You know what that is. So if you don't tell me what it is, forget about it. Like stop there and go back to, you know, do not collect $200, go to jail. What have you done to study it? Okay, that helps me understand the value of what you're doing. Who else cares about it in the past and present, right? Because now you're telling me about your audience or about people who will benefit from this work that you do, right? So who else cares about this? If nobody cares, you're the only person on the planet that cares about it, then you have a real problem. You're not sustainable is what I would say, right? You're just not sustainable. Who else will care about it in the future? Especially if I share some scholarship about it. Do you get that these are some of the things you could write about? Right, that were not included in the other criteria, in the other guidelines? What should others care? Why should others care about it? Okay, so why is a really interesting word. It can send you crazy, it can make you crazy, because there might not be 8 why, but there might be 5 good whys, right? And if you have 5, if you have more than 2 of anything in your writing, you have 3, that's a magic number. If you have 5, that's great. So if you have at least 3 reasons why other people should care about this, then now I might agree with you, right? I'm going to be really skeptical when I'm reading your proposal. Because am I skeptical when I'm reading everybody's proposal? Yes. Do you think I believe what the person wrote? No. I'm going to look for evidence that what they wrote is true. What can be learned from studying it? If you don't tell me, how am I supposed to know? If it's not my field, how am I supposed to know? Right? You're the expert, not me. I'm the reader. I'm the dummy. How and where did it develop or evolve? Okay? So give me some context about your area of expertise or about your project. Give me something that helps me feel that I learned something about what you're doing that I probably wouldn't have learned if in my life, ever. So teach me. This is like a teach me question. What's the gap or need or problem with it? So, has nobody looked at this? How do you know nobody's looked at this? What's the need? Why do we need to know about this? What's the problem? That's an easy one. What's the problem? How does it relate to or support other areas of the field or other fields? And that was in there. That was in the previous guidelines. Who else has tried to study it? How is that different from what you're doing? Right? That's another teach me moment. Teach me so that do you think I'm going to do the research on your project? If you don't teach me the answer to that question, and I think that's a very obvious question to answer, then I'm going to be disappointed that you didn't, right? Especially if that other application did. Because reviewers learn by reading good proposals and bad proposals. And they just look at the pile and they read and they go, wow, that was really good. And you get a star for doing that. But then everybody else who didn't do that is now at a lower level of quality. What has been done to interpret it? So who else has done something to interpret this issue? What impact will understanding it have on others? Okay, so do you like this list?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty helpful list. And when we do these exercises, you might want to identify in the proposal that you're reading that the person answered one of these questions. So the practice that you need is the practice of identifying what questions are being answered in grant applications. And if those questions are being answered in those applications, then you should use those questions for your own application. And you shouldn't depend on anybody else to give you those questions. You should invent your own questions, right? Because you want your container to be beautiful. Because if your container is beautiful, you're going to have a beautiful product. I know none of you believe me. Okay, so my philosophy is that you start with what you have. So the biggest thing the problem with people in general is that they don't know what they have. Meaning, you all have assets and resources. You have knowledge, assets, resources. You have access to assets. And I would venture to guess that that you're not cognizant of it, because we are all advantaged in this room. We all have so many more assets than we need that it's an overwhelming thing to consider that we have lots to draw on. Because as human beings, we are normally seeking what we don't have. Is that correct? So if I asked you, what don't you have, or what don't you know, or where haven't you been, you can easily tell me that. Because that's usually in the front of your mind. It's what you think about as you go through life and your goals. It's what you don't have that you're striving for. But you have to actually have an inventory or a sense of knowledge of what you already have. Because you don't get credit unless you articulate what you already have or what you've already done or what you have access to. You don't get credit for that unless you know that you've got it and you can write about it, right? So we're not very good about writing about what we already have to contribute to a problem or to contribute to a gap or to contribute to a field, because we're looking for what we don't have and we're trying to get that. So, but what happened to the Howard Zinn quote? So the Howard Zinn quote is, Zinn. His quote is, the definition of importance. Do I have it in here? Somebody said
It's in the printout.
Oh yeah, here it is. The definition of importance depends on one's values, right? The definition of importance, think about this. The definition of importance depends on one's values. It's not your value, right? It's the stranger's values. The person reading your proposal is the stranger, and it's their values that matter. It's not your values, right? That's why it's a challenge, and it's a game if you consider it a game. You don't know this person. You're going to try to articulate what you believe is important or valuable. And maybe if you articulate more than one thing, you'll be able to find the value that matches with the person who's reading it. So if you only give me one value of your work, you are in trouble. That's not enough to risk an entire grant proposal on one value. That's kind of like, I'm entitled to get this money. I'll just give you one reason why this is so important. And I'm hoping that this one reason matches up with what you think is important. Because otherwise, I'm in the trash, right? Then you look around for more evidence. So first you look at what you know and you have, and then you look around at other people's work to see if you have evidence, if they give you evidence for you. And that's it. Ta-da! So now we're going to start with, how am I doing? Oh my goodness, are we way off? Okay, so we're going to do the first exercise. Everybody game for the first exercise? Let's see. Everybody on this side of the room gets that one. Everybody on this side of the room gets this one. Okay? And we need the extras, because after this is over, we're going to share with the other people, okay? Don't take the extras with you because your colleague might need it. That might only be two. There's one, you can pass it.
Got an extra here.
Okay, so you just need one, right? Okay. Any extras? Okay. These are extras. All right, so this is the assignment. These are the instructions. You're going to read this. You can wait a moment until, you start to read. You're going to have your highlighter with you, right? Everybody has a highlighter? So, these are two different versions of the same project. Okay? This is one version. Everybody here has one version. Everybody here has a different version. Okay? You are going to highlight everything in this one-page statement of significance and impact that you feel shows the value of the project, right? Only that it identifies with, oh, this is of value, this is important. This person is now communicating significance, okay? And yes.
So things that are creating necessary context but aren't directly speaking to significance we do not highlight?
Correct.
Okay.
We just want the parts that you believe show significance. Everybody got it? Okay. You're gonna get like 5 minutes. Okay? You can do it.